Welcome into the show today. Thank you for making this podcast a part of your day. If you're watching for the first time or the 1000th time, hit that subscribe button so this podcast will show up in your feed Monday through Saturday. This podcast is 100% honest, 100% of the time, with a touch of sarcasm, regardless of how you feel. And we're still talking about the Aaron Rodgers saga and how it impacts the Vikings organization. Because yesterday, the news broke that the Vikings would not currently sign Aaron Rodgers. Now, it did not rule out the possibility of the Vikings revisiting this conversation at a later time if they feel J.J. McCarthy is not ready yet or is still recovering from injury, and if Aaron Rodgers has not yet signed with the Steelers or Giants. So as of right now, the conversation is on hold, but it might not necessarily be over yet. And yesterday, I went on my show, and I said that the Vikings handled this situation very poorly. And I stand by that take because now McCarthy is going to go against the ghost of Aaron Rodgers. And what I mean by that is if McCarthy struggles at any point next season and the Vikings fail to win football games, every single Vikings fan is going to point to this point of this offseason and say, we could have had Aaron Rodgers. I know he's a little disastrous and distracting. I know he can be egotistical and a difficult guy to deal with, but he's Aaron Rodgers. He's a Hall of Fame 41-year-old quarterback who still managed to put up 28 touchdowns and 11 interceptions last season for the worst NFL organization, the Jets. He still found a way to put up good numbers. And I think the Vikings handled their quarterback offseason drama and speculation very poorly. And I believe that without necessarily doing it on purpose, the Minnesota Vikings have painted J.J. McCarthy in a bad light because they offered Darnold a contract. They offered Daniel Jones a contract. They were in discussions for at least a week about signing Aaron Rodgers and putting him in the Vikings quarterback room. Why do you have these conversations? Why would you ever discuss bringing in Sam Darnold on a 1-year, $15 million deal? He was never going to take that, but why did you offer it? Why did you discuss Aaron Rodgers potentially being a member of the Vikings organization? Why did you offer Daniel Jones a contract to come back to Minnesota? Now the Vikings are speaking on top of rooftops and saying that McCarthy's our guy. We always believed in him. We had no doubts about him moving forward. But if that's true, then why did you do your due diligence on Sam Darnold, Daniel Jones, and Aaron Rodgers? Why were these discussions ever taking place if you felt 100% certain that McCarthy was the guy? Because if that was the case, you could have easily signed Joe Flacco, or you could have signed Gardner Minshew or Mac Jones and ended this whole ordeal of offseason speculation. But they didn't. And the Vikings are very conscious of how they are being perceived. They have people in the building that the Vikings' perception is their job. They got to make sure it looks good. And right now, what the Vikings are trying to do is have the perception be, we love McCarthy. We always believed in McCarthy. That's why we're not bringing in Rodgers. We're not doing it because McCarthy's our guy and we believe in him. But the truth of the matter is this. The Vikings offered Darnold, they offered Daniel Jones, and they had a week-long conversation and discussion about the benefits and the cons of bringing in Aaron Rodgers to be QB1. And what you see now is everyone's back in the Vikings. I saw a couple of other people post from different shows. Oh, the Vikings believe in McCarthy. He's their guy. And that's exactly what the Vikings want everybody to believe. But Kyle Brandt on Good Morning Football, I'm not going to steal this stat and pretend it's my own, said this this morning about quarterbacks in the same situation as McCarthy. Meaning they sat their first year, they went into their second year, and became the starter. There's been 11 of them recently. Only one of those quarterbacks that were in McCarthy's situation, only one of the 11 made the playoffs his first season starting in his second NFL season. So the odds are not good. And that quarterback that did it was actually Dante Culpepper. But Drew Brees did it. There's other quarterbacks that took the same route, that you're a backup, didn't play your first year, came into second year, or QB1, and the amount of times that quarterback made the playoffs was once. One time out of 11. And the Vikings, the division is not getting any easier. And I bring this all up because right now the perception is we love McCarthy, we always stood by McCarthy, and there's really no other option besides McCarthy. When the truth is completely different. The truth was we considered bringing Darnold back, we considered bringing Daniel Jones back, and we considered bringing in Aaron Rodgers. But from the standpoint of Vikings fans, now you think that you love J.J. McCarthy. You think that you know that he's the guy. But you don't love J.J. McCarthy. You love the hope of McCarthy. You would turn on McCarthy so fast if he stinks next season that you would blame the Vikings organization for not signing Aaron Rodgers. Which, if he signed right now, you have threatened to stop being a Vikings fan. That's how the fan mindset works. You think that you know that McCarthy is going to be good and that he's going to lead the Vikings to the playoffs with the Bears, Packers, and Lions, but you don't know anything. You are living and believing the hope that McCarthy will step in with a Super Bowl roster ready to win, and you think that that's going to be enough, and you think he's going to step in seamlessly because of the hope of McCarthy. But facts come into play here. The Bears are good, the Packers are good, the Lions are good. Only one time out of 11 have guys in McCarthy's situation made the playoffs. And if he stinks next season, wow, you are going to criticize McCarthy so fast, and you're going to say stuff like, oh, yeah, he was never asked to do much at Michigan. What were the Vikings thinking? This guy sucks. It's going to take one bad game, and the Vikings fan base is going to hammer the Vikings quarterback and Vikings organization for not bringing in a guy like Aaron Rodgers when he was available. It's going to happen. I know it's going to happen because I know the way the fan mind works. You're fans. Right now, you think that McCarthy is going to be the guy. You have much hope for McCarthy. But as soon as he steps on that football field, and if he plays poorly in the first few weeks of the season, you are going to immediately start questioning what the Vikings organization was thinking. And you're going to go back to this time period of the NFL offseason, and you are going to remember that the Vikings offered Sam Darnold, they offered Daniel Jones, and they considered offering Aaron Rodgers a contract. And you're going to point to it and be like, oh, we should have signed those guys because McCarthy's not ready. We have the best wide receiver core in the NFL. We have a top 5 offensive line and a top 5 defensive line. Yet McCarthy is the one player holding the Vikings back from being a Super Bowl roster and being a Super Bowl contender. So what I believe is that the Vikings have put so much unfair pressure and their treatment of McCarthy this offseason may have been a little unfair because the fan base is going to come back to this timeline and say, you could have had somebody else if McCarthy stinks. If McCarthy stinks, the finger pointing is going to come back to mid-March when you could have had Aaron Rodgers. Or it's going to come back to early March when you could have signed Sam Darnold. So I just think you got to be very, very careful right now because the Vikings are setting this perception of we love McCarthy, but the truth is they discussed thoroughly the possibility of having 3 other quarterbacks in the building that would compete with McCarthy for the number 1 spot. Sure, their takeaway was McCarthy's the guy, but they offered Darnold, they offered Daniel Jones, and they thought for a long time about signing Aaron Rodgers. So I don't think it's as easy as, the Vikings believed in McCarthy. I don't think it's that easy. And I don't think it's that obvious. I don't think it's as clear and simple as McCarthy's our guy. We believed in him because there are a lot of moving parts in this whole ordeal. And based on the Vikings' decision-making, based on how long they waited to end the Aaron Rodgers saga, points to a lot of different things. Like, it shows a lot about the Vikings' belief in McCarthy that they dragged this Aaron Rodgers speculation on for 2 weeks. That's all we've been talking about. So that's my take on McCarthy and the Vikings' belief and future of McCarthy. The Timberwolves lost again last night. They lose to the Pacers when they're not playing their best players. And then they lose to the New Orleans Pelicans, who also stink this season. The Pelicans are 19-51. The Timberwolves, 40-31 right now, 1 game out of the 6th seed, currently the 8th seed, tied with the LA Clippers. These were 2 really, really bad losses because the the Timberwolves were riding an 8-game win streak going into these 2 games. And they were 2 clutch time games. They overlook opponents because here's what the Timberwolves do, and they do this all the time. And now they're starting to show their true colors again. Because you look at their 8 wins. They beat Phoenix, they suck. Philadelphia, they suck. Charlotte, they stink. Miami is no good. San Antonio, they're awful. Denver, good win. Orlando, they suck. Utah, they suck. 7 of their 8 wins during this 8-game win streak were against crappy teams. And then you read the post-game comments by the players, and it's all the same stuff. We're starting to believe in each other. We're getting used to playing with one another. We're just getting familiar with each other's tendencies, and we're just starting to soar. But you look at the schedule, and who did you beat? You beat one good team out of 8. You beat nobody. You are who we thought you were. And then they start getting cocky and confident, and we're just going to roll through the rest of the league because we won 8 in a row and we know each other's tendencies. And they start to fall for these lies that you're so good that we're just going to roll through the rest of the league. Well, then they play a hungry Indiana bench and lose in overtime. And then they get owned by Zion Williamson and the New Orleans Pelicans and lose 119 to 115. Anthony Edwards, 5 of 19, 4 for 10 from the three-point line, 29 points. Julius Randle, 17 points. Gobert, 10 points. Mike Conley, 16 points. Naz Reid was terrible, 3 for 11, 2 for 7 from the three-point line. I was listening to PA coming home from Bible study this morning, and he shared this fascinating statistic this morning on KFAN 9 to noon. Jose Alvarado, CJ McCollum, and he mentioned 2 other guards as well, or at least one other guard. He combined 4 players from the Pelicans roster, and he combined the biggest players, Gobert, Randall, McDaniels, and Naz Reid, on the Timberwolves roster. And he came away with the conclusion and fact that the 4 guards on the Pelicans roster had more combined rebounds than the big players on the Timberwolves roster. Jose Alvarado had 3 rebounds. CJ McCollum had 6 rebounds. Jeremiah Robinson Earl had 7 rebounds, and Bruce Brown had 7 rebounds. Jordan Hawkins had 6 rebounds. Jaden McDaniels, 0 rebounds. Julius Randle, 3 rebounds. Naz Reid had 7 rebounds, and Gobert had 9. Those players combined for 19 rebounds. And the players on the Pelicans roster, 6 plus 3 is 9, plus 7 is 17, 16, and plus 6 is 22. The Pelicans guards combined for 22 rebounds, and the Viking Timberwolves backcourt combined for 19. Jaden McDaniels had 5 points, a complete no-show. How does someone as tall as McDaniels, how does a rebound not just somehow fall into his lap accidentally? He played 24 minutes and had 0 offensive or defensive rebounds? And another point has been brought to my attention about the Timberwolves situation. And it's Anthony Edwards, who is obsessed with how many threes he can make this season. He's so cocky about, I've got so many threes. Look at me shoot the three-point ball, and look at me make the 3 at a career high rate and at an excellent level. He went 4 for 10 last night. That's 40%. And of course, you look at 40% and you're going to brag, missed 6 threes. That's 6 empty possessions. 29 points, 15 for 17 from the free throw line. Anthony Edwards this season is 47th out of 51 NBA players with at least 230 attempts inside the restricted area this year. Because Edwards is so obsessed with making threes, his ability to finish shots near the rim has completely gone to inefficiency. Anthony Edwards finished 0 of 7 at the rim in the half court in a loss to the Pelicans. His 61% field goal percentage at the rim this season is the lowest mark of his career since his 59.6% rookie season. Anthony Edwards has gone from a guy that's one of the best attackers and finishers at the rim to a cocky three-point shooter that loves to close out games because he wants to make a draining three. And now he can't finish at the rim. His greatest skill set, getting to the rim, dunking on guys, and finishing, has gone completely out the window because he's fallen for the idea that you've got to be a three-point shooter to win NBA games, to be the best player in the league. And sure, having a three-point shot is important for every NBA player. And your ability to be different and have different areas of the floor that you can score. But my go-to player that I'm going to look at here is Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, the MVP of the NBA this year. He attempts 5.8 three-point attempts per game and makes 2 of them. He is a 37% three-point shooter, which is good enough. It's good enough to be dangerous. He makes 2 threes a game. He averages 33 points a game, which tells me that his damage comes from the free throw line and the mid-range game. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander has brought back the mid-range game to the NBA. And everyone wants to follow the recipe of Steph Curry. Oh, look what Steph Curry can do. I'm going to mimic my game after Steph Curry because of the way he can make threes. The problem is you can't shoot the ball like Steph Curry. Steph Curry is the most legendary NBA shooter of all time. So the fact that you're going to try to mimic your game after Steph Curry makes no sense. And Anthony Edwards has fallen for this three-point trap idea, where he's so obsessed with making and taking threes that his ability to attack and score at the rim has suffered. And it's gone out the window. Because now his ability to do that is terrible. 47 out of 51 players with 230 attempts inside the restricted area this season. That is awful. And that's why you see the Timberwolves struggling late in games, because instead of going to the rim and trying to get fouled or dunking over somebody or finishing with a layup at the rim, Edwards wants to make a game-winning three. And I think this goes all the way back to childhoods. When you're a child and you're in the gym or you're playing outside and you do 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Nobody pictures in their head going to the rim and making a layup or dunking on someone. You picture making a jump shot from the three-point line or from the mid-range game. And every game, the Timberwolves get into a clutch time situation. There's Anthony Edwards shooting another contested three. There's Anthony Edwards trying to rely on his jump shot to win them games. And here's the problem. When you get into clutch time, when you get into high-pressure moments, that's when your talent takes over. And your skills take over. And Edwards, sure, he can make a bunch of threes in a game. But his greatest skill is not shooting the three. His greatest skill is getting to the rim and scoring. And he wants to shoot the three. And when you get into those high-pressure stake moments, then he struggles because he's trying to rely on something that he's not good at. He's trying to prove that, hey, I'm a jump shooter too. Look at me. It's not your game. That's not your strength. He's trying to prove to the rest of the NBA that he can score from the three-point line on an elite level. And the truth of the matter is, when he tries to do that, it actually hinders the Timberwolves' ability to win games late. Because he wants to play hero ball. He wants to show everybody he's the man by making a three and not attacking the lane and using his greatest strength to score the ball and win games. So that's the Timberwolves' problem right now. That's why they can't close games. And that's why they're going to be stuck in a play-in situation and might miss the playoffs completely. So it's very clear and obvious what's going on. All right, everyone, thank you for watching and making this podcast every day. Hit that subscribe button. This podcast is 100% honest, 100% of the time. Have a good day.